Good morning, everybody. How are we today? Obviously, we're not going to have everyone replying and saying hello, otherwise we're going to have a mishmash of all lots of noise and stuff. So just give us a little wave or a thumbs up or thumbs down if you're not feeling that great. Okay, Beverly, I like it. Okay. Oh, the thumbs up went up and then went down. For those of you that I don't know, haven't met before, my name is Russell Overy. I'm going to be leading our session today. So thank you for getting on board. I know some of you got on board like at 10:30 when we were just testing a couple of the features on here. So great to see you today. Can I just also double check that you've all logged into our polling app/website, Poll Everywhere, because I've got a couple of questions that I'd like to throw out to the group as we go through to make it as interactive as I possibly can. And then we're going to kind of showcase a couple of other things that we're able to do on Zoom when we're running virtual sessions as well. Okay, so it's nice to see you all here. I can see a lot of your faces. Some of you have got your cameras off, which is a shame because it's a big part of creating a connection when you're working virtually, but we're going to be talking about that exactly this morning. Okay, Melissa's up and she's dancing, but just a silhouette. You could actually, you look like, oh, she's gone again. She said enough. So, so I'm gonna kind of take you through a couple of core aspects, and bear in mind we've only kind of got 30 minutes this morning. So I'm not going to cover everything that you might need to know if you're running virtual teams or thinking about running sessions about running virtual teams, but more than happy to share with you later. And of course, do what we can to support you moving forward. So without further ado, I'm going to just jump in and share my presentation. I'm going to dip in and out of this as we go through. So if you haven't done so already, can I ask you to log in here? So pollev.com/IgniteTrain999. Or if you've got your mobile phone handy, just bring up the camera app and scan that, and it will bring you a link to your browser, Safari or Google Chrome, whatever you use on your phone, and it will just take you straight there. Now, all goes to plan as you're doing that. As I go onto the next screen, we will be asking our first question, and this is really just to kind of get a sense of where we all are. A couple of things really popping out there: productivity, engagement, obviously. Lack, not too sure if that's linked to engagement or something else. Pets, okay. Communication members, technology, yeah, barriers, kids. Okay, so some of the things that we're going to get. Company monitoring, motivation, lack of contact. All right, good stuff. So look, these are all common areas that people concern themselves with when they first become virtual managers as well. I wonder if we're going to get that one working now. Let's just skip forward from that one. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take you through some key elements, but really one of the core things to remember about leading a virtual team. Nothing actually changes in terms of your leadership behavior, okay? It should always be, and the mantra is always leadership first, location second. What virtual management does, or virtual leadership does, for me at least, it makes you a better leader of people because it makes you more conscious and conscientious of how you're interacting with your people. So where we've got some of these concerns on the board there about productivity and engagement, things like that, and also, you know, managing distractions at home, such as pets and kids and all the rest of it, particularly those of you at home with your kids who are schooling at the moment, like my kids as well. I understand how that's a distraction. So remember, it's always leadership first. So think about the behaviors that you need to interact or use to interact with your people. Location comes second. The fact that you're working virtually actually might even help with that. So look, you may or may not have heard of this concept. The Japanese word is gemba, which means the place where the work is being done. And essentially, it's a Japanese management concept that was adapted by Tom Peters and Robert Waterman in 1982 in a book they called In Search of Excellence, and they called it managing by walking around. That's basically what it is. And it's one thing that you're going to be missing when you're leading a virtual team is the ability to just wander around, interact with your team, have check-ins face-to-face, have those water cooler or pantry or coffee moments that you would just have naturally, where you bump into someone in the corridor, getting in and out of the lift. All of these things go away when you're working virtually. So it doesn't mean that this is no longer relevant, but it's no longer managing by walking around. I'm going to call it by managing by webcam, or leading by webcam is my preferred term. And essentially what we need to be doing here is being much more active with our teams. I'm going to help you with kind of 4 core areas of team leadership that you should be doing anyway, but we'll just kind of lift and give you some understanding and some tools of how they might work. Okay, so as we go through this, essentially, there's going to be 4 areas that we're going to look at. And these are the 4 key responsibilities that you have as a team leader. And like I said, these don't necessarily change when you're working face-to-face or virtually, but virtually they become a little bit more, how can I put it? You need to be a lot more aware of them. So the first thing we need to do is build trust and grow cohesion between members. Now, here's the thing. Most of us are probably used to working with the people that we're dealing with in the same office, and we know them face to face. So the building part might not be a big issue. The thing is, the more this self-isolation goes on, and I don't think it's going away very soon in the next couple of weeks, the more that those elements of relationship and trust will become really important to the team dynamic as we go. So definitely about having cohesion, engagement, trust between members is really important. Secondly, we have to make sure that the team, or the work that the team are doing, both at a team level and an individual level, they understand their expectations and their goals. They are clearly aligned with what they're supposed to be delivering for the business of the team. And that is something that you are 100% accountable for doing. The next thing is about managing workload and also workflow. So as it says there, it's about understanding who in your team has the skills and capacity, who can deliver and who's going to be best placed to deliver, and who may be needing some extra support. The interesting thing about this is that, please bear in mind, is that not everyone is suited for virtual working. There are certain people with behavioral traits or personality traits, if you like, that need to be around and interact with people, that have a little bit more difficulty focusing if they're on their own. So it doesn't mean that they can't do it. It's just that means that they might not be as easily shifting into that mindset as certain other people. So that's something else you need to be aware of as well. And finally, this is essentially the whole crux of servant leadership, is about removing barriers for the team. So essentially what we want to be doing is, what is the issues that are slowing the team down? What are the issues that are actually stopping us moving forward? Because when we talk about concern about productivity, if as the team leader, you can just do everything you can to remove those barriers, whether that's by bringing in support, by maybe organizing different technology for that person, or making sure that you're available on a regular basis, or that you're also setting out certain working rhythms within the team that are going to operate well, that's really important, okay? So that's the 4 key areas that we're going to look at, and I'm only going to spend a few minutes on each one as we go through. The one I will spend more time on today is the first one, which is build trust and growing cohesion between team members. So once again, if I can ask you to have a quick look at that. Just a survey question. Do you think as a virtual leader, you should have more or less contact with your team? What do you think? So if I can ask you just to punch in, same amount, wait, okay, backwards and forward. Okay, looks like we're going to kind of land somewhere around about 50-50. Okay, less, okay, good. I'll just give that maybe 10-15 more seconds to see how this comes in. Okay, all right. So we've got 50% of us who believe, oh, a little bit of a shift, 55% of us now that think that we need more communication, 5% less, and with same amount, 40%. So it's roughly split between more and same amount. Okay, so here's the thing. Absolutely, you need more communication with your team. It's the general rule when you're leading virtually is to over communicate. And I'm going to give you some ways of doing that at the moment. I see people changing their answers now. But essentially what we're looking to do here is to give as much information to the team and the individuals as possible. Because what you've got to bear in mind, you've now got to compensate for that lack of bumping into each other in the corridor. The water cooler chat. So you might have Ahmed working on one project, he bumps into John, and John's working on something else, but they start talking and realize there's a crossover in some of the things they do, or some of the ways that they're actually working, or a system they use. That's something that just happens naturally when you're in the what's referred to as co-located workspaces. So we need to have more contact with our team. And I'm going to give you some kind of tools and some recommended working rhythms on how to do that. So look, I'm going to run through a couple of things on this slide very briefly, because we're going to start off by looking at trust and cohesion. And how do you do that virtually? Well, sometimes that's a really difficult thing to do. The first thing I would always recommend you do is have well-documented processes. That's both around, as it says there, the work delivery and your communication methods. And I'm going to share with you at the end of the call a couple of things to help you with that. that I would recommend if you're managing a team virtually, that you get on a video call and you run through it with them. Get your team to weigh in to what you're trying to achieve with them, not just having to buy into what you're getting them to do. As soon as they do that, you'll be able to deal with that a lot easier. Okay, so what we'll have here then is the ability to, or we'll be looking to reduce ambiguity and create common grounds. So this is really about clarity and relationship building, and I'm going to give you some little tips on how we do this, but the core to this is basically making sure you have regular contact with your team, and ideally the team has regular contact with each other. And I'm going to give you a couple of rhythms on how we do that. It is absolutely possible to build relationships and build team cohesion online or virtually. Is it more challenging? Do you need to be more conscious and conscientious of how you go about it? Absolutely. Than if you're face-to-face, but it still can be done. I'm going to give you some tips on that as well. So get input from the team when standardizing process and setting goals, okay? This is one thing that always bugs me with managers, leaders, however you want to refer to them, but is about dictating work and workflow because they feel they know best. The people that are doing the work, if you're doing your job correctly and you're growing, building, coaching, giving feedback to your people, they know the job, or they should know the job in the nicest possible way better than you. You're not there to do the job. So empower them. Even if you're not ready, or if they're not ready yet to make full decisions and take total control, you can retain some of that control and decision making, but make sure you empower them and bring them into the conversation. Once again, you can do it a little bit when you're on a video call, but to pick up little micro expressions or a rolling of the eyes or a flick of the eyebrows, you know, if you've got 12 people on the screen at once, you're not going to pick that up from people. So it's the subtleties in the body language when you're face-to-face that you're going to miss. So when you get input from the team, you're much more likely to get people to engage in what you're trying to achieve with them. And this is the thing, it's your responsibility to ensure that everyone knows what they're doing and what's expected of them and by when, and also who they're accountable for or to. These things are really important. And then finally, this is something, once again, that should be done face-to-face, but when you're working virtually, once again, you have to be very conscious of this. Consistent standards with everyone. And what we mean by that is if someone has a success, that you celebrate it. It doesn't matter who it is. You will have people in your team, whether you care to admit it or not, that you get on with better or you find it easier to work with than other people on your team. And what that does is obviously creates some unconscious bias, and that potentially, I'll say potentially, informs how we interact with certain people. So if you have a certain relationship with someone, particularly when you're working virtually, it can potentially color your interactions with them. So you have to be very clear that your standards of performance, feedback, discipline, timeframes, all the rest of it are consistent across the board. Because if, once again, if Ahmed is delivering everything on time, but every so often John gets to let something slip, Ahmed will find out about that at some stage, and then all of a sudden you've got a team that could potentially be on the brink of anarchy. So you've got to make sure you're consistent with everyone across the board. So here's something that I like to talk about when we talk about working virtually, and this is another kind of, for want of a better word, handout that I'll share with you at the end of the call, because I've got a few more questions. There's lots of different ways that you can communicate virtually. Obviously, some of them are more in-depth than others. But here's just a couple of examples from the handout that I'll share with you. The first question is to ask yourself, how important is my message? And, you know, essentially you might have two possible answers to that. And it might be, well, it is important. I need to document the exchange. And from working in, you know, the Middle East for 15 years, most people want to do that anyway. It's not necessary, right? So you've got to really ask yourself, do I need to do that? The second is, well, it's pretty disposable, right? So it's not that important, you know, in terms of that being retained or that we have an audit trail for that, but it's something that I do need to communicate. So essentially, if it's something you need to document, then obviously email, text, instant message, or a team platform. And a team platform, I mean something potentially like a Slack, if you use Slack, or even a Google Doc, something like that, where the team have access to share information. If it's pretty disposable, then phone call, voicemail, or video chat. Obviously, with video chats as well, you can simply hit the record button as well if that's important, but it's quite an arduous process to go back through them. So if you're talking about importance of messages, that's the way we would recommend you working. Another question maybe to consider is, how complicated is my message? Once again, it might be, I can say that in a sentence or two. Or actually, this is pretty detailed and it's going to require some clarity and probably some explanation to my team. And once again, we're just going to look at these two platforms. If you can sound a sentence or two, bung it in text message, WhatsApp even. If it's detailed and requires clarity, every time you get an opportunity, phone call, voicemail, video chat, that's the best way to do that. But here's the thing, voice calls and video chat aren't required for everything because they do take a little bit more time. Out of those three, however, there is a ranking. Anytime you can, get on a video call with someone, get face-to-face with them, then a phone call, and then worst case voicemail. But those are the order of the three that we want to look at. So I'll share that with you because there's a number of other different considerations that you can make when you're putting that together. So here's the thing about remote team building. What I always recommend is that when you get on a call with someone, create a space in your agenda for personal topics. It doesn't mean that you're talking for hours about what Gene did at the weekend. But what we're talking about here is, once again, trying to replace those natural bumping moments, right? So how many times you go into a team meeting and before it starts, you're sitting down, catching up, maybe sharing a meme or talking about what you're doing at the weekend. So do that, even if it's just a quick 5-minute go around. What did you do at the weekend? That's really important. Is there any other projects or things people are working on that will help people understand that person's capacity and what kind of workload they're on? And once again, it's going to help you build and get to know each other as people, not just cogs in a wheel, as it says there. I know some of you are still actively recruiting, which is fantastic. So you might be onboarding people into your business virtually. So once again, this is why we're talking about getting to know people as well. Yeah, so have that personal information as part of the event agenda. Now, here's the thing. As I said at the beginning, if you've got the ability to use a video calling service like Zoom, and it's great that the TRA have actually lifted the bans on these at the moment because of the restrictions on these, because it makes work so much easier. If people have the ability to have that with a webcam, and most laptops do, I would almost insist upon that's a rule. There is a massive difference between having that person's face there and seeing them interact and react and just having a black box in front of you, okay? If there's any successes you have from the team, whether that is a personal success, team success, or even an organizational success, make sure you celebrate those on the groups as well. On the flip side of that, if you've got developmental feedback, always make sure you're doing that privately. Arrange a time, and always when you're working virtually, do that on a video call. Once again, you're allowing some emotional connection with that person. It's not quite the same as being face-to-face or belly-to-belly, but you're going to be able to read their reactions a little bit, okay? So developmental feedback, always privately and ideally on a video call, okay? So the next one is talking about how do you create linked goals? And I'm assuming most people, and I always make this assumption, but I'll do that carefully, know about SMART goals. Now, SMART is just an acronym that we use to test the validity of a goal. So is it specific, measurable? Is it achievable? The key one is the R, because there's different versions. Is it relevant? That's the key word we want to work on. And is there a time frame to it? So all it is a checklist against those goals. And once again, if you can work with your team members to set those goals, even better. So the three types of goals you're going to be dealing with is organizational goals, which are usually strategic goals. You and your team may not have any input into those. You may do, depending on the level of your role within the organization. But an organizational goal has to be translated into action and deliverables. So this is why we end up building teams, or most businesses have departments that do this, but we'll refer to them as teams. And your team goals are always going to be linked to your organizational goals. And they're a mix of strategic goals and tactical goals. So if there is from a finance department point of view, you have a goal that potentially is setting up a new system, there is an element of strategic goal or planning in that. And there's also an element of tactical application into that as well. And then obviously the third one is then, as you whittle that down from the team to the individuals, these are 99% of the time always tactical goals. So tactical is actually doing the work and hitting the milestones, which is delivering the strategy. But once again, as you can see there, it's always linked to the above. So anything that anyone is doing on a day-to-day basis, any task should be linked to the team goal, should be linked to the organizational goal, which is usually part of the strategic awareness, okay? And once again, I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on this because we don't have that much time today. But yeah, three types of goals is what we want to look at. And if you can make them SMART, and I can help anyone with that if you need a little bit more information on SMART as well moving forward. So the third one is about managing workflow and workload. And this is really about kind of understanding who can do what and when, who has the capacity, the workload, the skill, and also the focus. So here's a quick question for you. If I can ask you to go back to your survey, I'm just curious, if you are a team leader yourself, and by the way, if you're not and you don't lead anybody, just choose the 1 to 3 option. Because I'm curious to see how many of us have got silly sized teams, like 10 plus. Okay. All right, so with 16% at 10 plus, that's maybe, I don't know, maybe 1, 2, or 3 people on the team here. My advice to you, if you've got a team over to the size of 10 when you're working virtually, if you've got any seniors in your team that you can delegate some of your management tasks or leadership tasks to, then please do that. But you have to be very careful about what you do delegate there. One thing I'm going to talk to you about in a moment is about working rhythms, and if there's something, a couple of the meetings that you can break the teams down into a little bit smaller sometimes, that sometimes can make it easier for you, particularly when you're talking about giving feedback and coaching virtually as well. So over half of us have got 1 to 3 people, which is more than manageable. I mean, even up to 7, 8, 9 people is okay. Once you get 10 plus, it starts to get a little bit more difficult. The ideal team size, and we'll get into this in another session if you want, is 9 people. It's to do with the neurological connections you've got as a communicator, but I won't bore you with that right now. Okay, good. All right, thank you for sharing that. So communication rhythms, and this is where you can, if you've even got a big team of 15, 20 people, you could do some of these, but I would maybe advise breaking them down a little bit if you've got some smaller teams. So look, the first thing I always recommend is every single week you do a kickoff meeting. Make it 60 minutes maximum, have a very clear agenda that's set out up front so people understand what we're doing and what we're talking about. So this involves personal check-ins. If you've got any tracking software like a CRM or a project management tool, or if you use something like Trello or Monday.com, make sure you're going through those and making sure the tasks are on top of that. What you're really looking to get out of each individual on this is, what are their big rocks for the week? What are they going to be achieving that week? You don't need a whole breakdown of what they're doing and when they're going to make a cup of tea. And it's a question of what are the big things they're looking to take off the board. And then at the end of that, you would then inject what we call your daily huddle agenda, which is the following. I would highly recommend you do this every single day. It's very useful even if you're working face to face. 15 minutes, choose a time early in the morning, 8:30, 9 o'clock at the latest, 15 minutes. And these are the 3 questions you want to ask people. What did you do yesterday? What will you do today? What barriers or impediments are you facing? That third one is really important for you as a leader. That's where you're going to earn your money, is removing those barriers or impediments for people. Maybe there's other people in the team or in the business that can support you do that, but you're going to facilitate this. What you need people to do is focus on their tasks, okay? The yesterday and what you do today is going to allow you a little bit to start having a little bit more control for those of you that are concerned about that in terms of productivity, because you're allowed to measure that and push that with people. And if you don't think that people are actually delivering as much in a day as they could, or they could be doing more, once again, you can have that offline conversation with them after that meeting as well, or set up a time to do that, okay? And then the last thing I would always recommend, a minimum of every single month, you have a one-to-one with every one of your team members. If you can do it more regularly, every couple of weeks, then fantastic. But a minimum one-to-one, because once again, you don't have those opportunities to bump into people, and it's vital that you create those. So if you're going to do nothing else today, get on your calendar, book in these rhythms, and get monthly one-to-ones booked in with your people if they're not done already. And once again, Zoom is a great platform for that, but you may well have your own ones in your organization already. And then finally, when you're talking about your teams as well, the general rule is to over communicate. As I said earlier, share as much information and document as much as you can. There is a line to that, and we talked about that earlier in terms of what is important to you, but do share freely, not feely, but share as much information as you possibly can, because you might have some ideas or some ways of working that will come out from the team, from people that aren't necessarily directly connected. So keep everyone informed as much as possible. And as I said earlier, let those who know the job do it, empower them. Guess what? If they make a mistake, it's not the end of the world, okay? Dial it back, use it as a learning opportunity, okay? Give them that freedom to create their own levels of engagement within the business. And this is where you come in as a servant leader, because the last one of our 4 kind of areas here is about you removing barriers for the team. This is a really important piece, particularly those of you that are adopting agile working principles. It's a massive part of Scrum methodology, if anyone uses that. It's essentially your job not to do the work, but to make sure that road is clear for those people to deliver, okay? Because they know the job. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you to just take this question, and we're going to just pop you out into a couple of rooms, okay? So I'm going to put you into a room with about 6 other people, and I'm going to ask you to open your microphones up, and I'm going to give you 2 or 3 minutes just to have a couple of a conversation about these things, and just put a couple of responses on the form. We'll come back and have a look at it, okay? So if you've got any questions, we'll pop in and out of the rooms very quickly. We'll only be in there 2 or 3 minutes. So as much as you do want to get in there and do all the niceties and how are you, just jump in and answer that question. So once again, the question of what kind of barriers and impediments do you think your team might be facing when they're working remotely? If you go onto your poll everywhere, you'll see that question on there, so you can pop a couple of responses on there as well, okay? And that is it. I'm going to send you out. There's going to be 6 people in each group, and then I'll pop into some of the rooms if possible, okay? See you all soon.
And I did write it on the message, but mine was running out of things to do while working from home,
Right.
especially in a facing job where you're hiring, dealing with day-to-day staff, interviewing. There's obviously only so much admin you can do.
Yeah.
And catch up on. Yeah, obviously that's going to phase out soon.
Okay, interesting. Is anyone else online here? Because I can see 3 other people, but no one's microphone's open.
Yeah, I'm here. Oksana is here.
Hey, Oksana.
And yeah, hello. One of the challenges my team will be facing, part of my team, I do have moms with young kids, and because all the kindergartens, all the schools are out now, I don't know, if you have kids, you can imagine how challenging it is to work with kids running around. So this definitely will be a challenge. Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to dip into another room. I'd also say, think about the dads as well, because I have that same situation. And honestly, it's not that I'm upset or offended by it, but people think about that with women, but they don't think about it with the guys. This is true.
Yeah.
You're very right. This is very true. Thank you.
No, awesome.
Work and sale for us, the main challenge is actually clients meeting. Not our client has Zoom, and they're not ready to have a Zoom meeting. So to explain to the staff how they need to talk, why the client needs to go online, this is basically the main challenge for me.
So we have something from Natasha as well. For me, one of my team members is pretty new, but he really beats himself up when he's not getting something right. So training him and encouraging him to do well, but not get ahead of himself is a challenge. Yeah, I think for new joiners, this period will be super, super challenging. I'm not sure how it is in your organizations, but for us, face challenges with the recruitment process, for example. How do we continue the interviews? We do have different technologies, but not all the team members, for example, are allowed to use it. So yeah, technology is another issue in this time. For example, for our colleagues in Iran, they are not able to access the same technology that we access here, and vice versa. They're using WhatsApp calls there. We can't use it here. So technology is another issue.
Okay, awesome. Brilliant. Thank you very much. I'm going to leave you guys for a moment. Okay, so I think most of us are coming back in now. Once again, I was able to dive into a couple of conversations. I was wondering if I could just ask a couple of you to put onto the poll a couple of the things that came out of your conversations. Yeah, okay, internet connection. We were just talking about some of the connections with working with businesses in Iran, where the internet isn't a fantastic tool because it's very kind of, the bandwidth is reduced there quite often. So WhatsApp you can use, you can't use that here. Zoom you can use here, you can't use there. Yeah, anxiety and experience duplication. Yeah, that's also something else. Yep. Okay. Some good answers in here. Stick. Who said stick? Please feel free to open up your microphone and talk to us about that. Too many cooks. Extroverts challenge, which is what we mentioned earlier about how do you engage people that need to be around other people. Effective software usage. Yeah, some training that needs to be required there. Overdose of news. Okay. Level of staff members in Saudi or other countries as well. Okay, so that's in terms of skill levels, knowledge levels. Some ambiguity in terms of what's being put out there. So once again, that's why clarity as a team leader is really important. Getting used to manage the team remotely, not having face-to-face interaction. Yep. In virtual working, disturbance. I'm assuming that's kind of disturbances at home with dogs, kids, you know, things like that, meeting with customers, stress management. I know some people, you know, you might be up to speed with technology. Your team might be great with things on platforms like Zoom, but maybe your customers aren't, which then creates an issue. So that's when we literally go old school. We get back to telesales, I guess. Productivity and engagement. Okay, some really good stuff here as well. So when I pull this, we'll share this with you if you're interested moving forward. Okay, so motivation, engagement, productivity, all of those things, those last three, I would say, as much as you can, have as many touch points with your people as possible as a team and individuals. Obviously, you've still got your own work to be done. And I know one of the conversations we have is, you know, if I've got a job that's quite dependent on being in the office and things are slowing down, it's actually kind of running out of things to do. Well, as a team leader, just make sure you use that opportunity to coach, develop, to get one-to-ones, to build your relationships, to build people in those processes. Once again, using Zoom for coaching is a really effective tool. It's something we can help you with if you need as well. Okay, cool. So look, the last thing I'm going to offer you today, and this is something I'm going to send you out, is I always recommend people do a team charter. I know some of you are on the call have worked with us already, and then some of you already done this. But I've kind of customized it a little bit, and I'm going to just share the document with you. And the team charter is really setting out how are you as a team going to work together. What we're doing here is we get everyone to have a little bit of input into how we work, a little bit in terms of how we're going to interact. What are the rules of engagement, for want of a better word, that we're going to use, and what we're going to be looking to do is for everyone to have an agreement on that. Once again, if you do that, you can send it out to everyone. Get them to think about a few things, and within 45 minute, an hour call, it's only got to be a one-time thing. You can get those things written down. The first question, I leave this on here, whether it's face-to-face or remote, because it's something that people often go, well, that's obvious, but then they can't put into words. And the first question is always, why do you exist as a team? So what's your purpose? And if you can understand that as the leader before you go into that, so what's your purpose as a team? Why do you exist in the organization? What are you there to deliver? And make sure everyone's clear on that. And that helps deliver this little piece here about linking goals and working alignment. So look, that kind of brings us to the end of the session today. We had 45 minutes. I'm at 11:42, so I really appreciate your time. Apologies if I've spoken really quickly. Apologies if you'd love to have jumped in with a question, but there is an opportunity for you to do that now. So just while we got like a couple more minutes, if anyone wants to open up their microphone, does anyone have any questions or comments you'd like to raise with us or maybe the group before we go ahead?
Can I ask a question, please?
Zahir, please fire away.
Yeah, so being someone who's working with virtual teams for some time now, especially with a different multi-country landscape that we have in our market, this is something I've noticed. I just want to hear anyone else's feedback on this. I feel like virtual ways of working really kind of highlights the different performance levels that you have within a team. And for me, I notice that even when I'm working with someone closely or virtually, because for example, my role is in the office for 2 to 3 days of the week and outside of the office for 2 to 3 days. So for me, I have both with certain team members, it's face-to-face interaction, and with certain team members, it's across different countries. But for me, what I've noticed is a high performer is a high performer regardless of the workspace being face-to-face or virtual, versus a medium to low performer will be, may even struggle more with virtual ways of working. So for me, I find it to just really highlight high performance. Is that a fair statement, or is that a little bit unfair to say?
I think if that's your experience and you've got enough points of data, for want of a better word, then I think it's a fair statement. Look, one thing virtual working does, because really what you get to judge people on, particularly if you're working in different countries, is the output, okay? you don't necessarily get to see the outcome. You don't get to see the output. So in terms of how they go about it. So you do judge people more on their ability to deliver and the quality of their work. Now, the interesting thing is that if you're hiring people virtually, they're going to be based in another city, another location, another country. My recommendation, if possible, and it might not always be easy with visa issues and all the rest of it, but is hire them on a one project basis to start with, because you will very, very quickly see, and here's a nice thing to do, is if you've got a couple or three candidates that might be really close, give them the same piece of work. Even if it's a week long or a 2 week long, see who delivers, because that's something you'll see very, very quickly. Because you are right, people who are productive and high performers, you'll usually see them rise to the top, whether they're based in Azerbaijan talking to you on Zoom or they're sitting next to you in the office. That's my put on it. So feel free to, I'll open the floor up if anyone else wants to help to hear with that. Perfect. There's my 10-second rule, so no input, so I'll move on. Thank you for that, Zahir. Is there any other questions or comments anyone would like to put to the group?
None have appeared on the chat function, Russell, but I'm waiting for anyone, if they don't want to speak but do want to use the chat function, and feel free to ask any questions on there and can pass them on to Russell. But just unmute your mic and ask the question if you have one.
Okay, awesome. Please feel free to do that, even if we're going ahead. Just one thing more I'm going to ask you to do on your polling site is I would love to get some feedback from you on this session today. So literally we're at, what is the time now? 11:45, so I'm bang on time. There's, I think, 5 questions on there. I'd really appreciate some feedback because it's going to help us tweak in terms of the way we deliver and prepare these sessions as well. Thank you very, very much for your time. If you need any of us, I mean, I gave you the contact details before. We have your contact details. I'm going to, or at least Ben Carter, who contacted you, will be sending out the team charter agenda. I'm going to send you out the list of questions, which is about the asking yourself your type of communications you need to use. And I think that's it. If there's anything else you need or want from us, please give us a shout. And if we can help, we will do. Thank you very much, everybody. Like I said, reach out to me if you need me, and we'll look forward to speaking to you soon. Bye-bye.